Our speaker of today is Cleopatra Mseka. She's an expert, a subject matter on this field, with over 16 years of experience leading digital projects and, of course, business transformation programs. Cleopatra brings a well-known of change management to the table. Of course, she has been working with multiple organizations. She specialized in change management, guide teams, and find innovation solutions to change business. During our webinar, Cleopatra will share some strategies to help us navigate the change management effectively without delays. Now, let's dive in and learn from Cleopatra expertise. And remember, we will have time for questions at the end of the presentation. And if by any chance we are not able to address your question directly, we are going to provide you with a form that you can fill it out, and later on we will follow with you. So without any more delays, let's start this webinar into change management transformation from Project Management Office. So let's start. Cleopatra, thank you for joining us today.
Hello, good afternoon, good morning, good evening. Thank you so much for having me on this very exciting and important session. Okay, brilliant. So thank you so much for making the time to join this webinar for us to dissect this very important topic about change management. So we are going to look at what is change management or change management office in the context of PMO. And yeah, let's unpack change management a little bit, because perhaps we all have different understandings of what we mean by change management. So we'll demystify that a bit. And then we will talk about how can you embed change management practices for your PMO's success. There's some practical quick wins you can put in place to move forward. So first things first, let's get acquainted. Thank you, Fernando. I think he's already introduced me. So I am a transformation enthusiast, a project manager, program manager, and a change manager, almost 2 decades working in the transformation space, over 50 projects. And from those 50 projects, I have been a change manager on 22 of those projects. So I like to think of myself as a change manager without borders. You heard of Doctors Without Borders. So I'm a change manager without borders. Wherever there is an exciting transformation initiative, I love to see how I can get involved and contribute, have a bit of fun, but also have an impact. I am CBPMO certified and also hold a number of change management certifications, as you've seen. So, change management within the PMO context. So I'm probably preaching to the choir with this definition, but just so everybody's on the same page. When we talk about PMO, we are describing an umbrella term for a function that exists to define, maintain, and ensure standards for project management to deliver strategic initiatives in the organization. It's an umbrella term really because it is all encompassing of projects, programs, and portfolios within the organization. So perhaps you call it something else in your organization, but when we say PMO, it could be the same as your enterprise PMO or your transformation office, depending on your organization culture and terminology that you use. So PMO implementations are on the rise. We are seeing more and more PMO functions being set up. So there's basically an upward trajectory. But there are some challenges that PMOs still face. 46% of PMO directors say that they don't understand the value of project management. Their leadership teams, 68% of stakeholders perceive their PMOs as bureaucratic. And we have a large number of PMOs that fail within 3 years of being set up, or some that actually completely shut down because the value has not been demonstrated. And let's not talk of cost. I think we all have a project that has, gone over the cost baseline. Some projects and programs are running at a overrun of 200%. So these are many, many challenges that PMOs still face today. Of course, there are various reasons that contribute towards the challenges PMOs face, such as insufficient PMO governance, maybe the maturity of the PMO teams, insufficient streamlining of processes. But according to PMI, a large number of these challenges can be attributed up to 75% to resistance, resisting to change, cultural issues within organizations, and lack of sponsorship. So if you look at all these elements, I think what we are talking about is really human factors that affect the success of our PMOs and affect the success of our projects. These human factors are what we call change management issues that needs to be addressed. So why is it that with all these factors that contribute to the challenges of PMOs, only about 50% of active PMO changes today currently consider change management practices? So change management, a big part is really about driving adoption, driving engagement in the organization. You can lead a horse to water, but you cannot make him drink. If you reflect on your own current projects or program that you are driving at the moment, what would you say the adoption rate is at the moment? Are you able to spill that figure out? Is it something you are measuring? Is it something that you're monitoring? Is it something that you are adjusting, your approach on the project to ensure that there is adoption? Why is adoption important? Because adoption is linked to us achieving our strategic outcomes. It is linked to benefits realization within our organizations. So as we are on the move to set up more and more PMOs globally, again, when new PMOs are setting up, they also encounter some human factor related challenges in setting up a new PMO. Part of this can be attributed to cultural inhibitors, where you may find that because of the culture in your organization, it is really difficult to push information to accelerate decisions to be made as it relates to your PMO setup or your PMO execution. You may find a challenge as well around the velocity of change. So you're setting up your new PMO, but to what extent have you understood the pace and absorption rate of change that your organization can take up? So maybe you've set up a new PMO and already are trying to launch several projects, but how is this going to affect the organization? And what is the impact that your PMO is going to have on the organization once it's set up? Maybe an organization that has already been running with 30 or 50 projects, and suddenly you now have this centralized function that people have to kind of comply with. So what is the impact on the organization now that projects have to move under the control and monitoring of a PMO or the guidance of a PMO? Who are the stakeholders that need to influence your PMO or influence other C-suites and other stakeholders to support what the PMO is trying to achieve in terms of supporting strategy? So, technically you could get quite a bit of resistance to the idea of having your PMO in place, that we've been running projects for 10 years. Why is there suddenly a need to centralize and control everything? So this is quite typical of new PMOs that's setting up. For PMOs that are already operational and existing, let's say with mature PMOs, they also encounter some common pitfalls as you roll out your various programs and portfolios, which are all human factor related. Challenges around sponsorship. Maybe you don't have the right level of sponsorship to really influence top level stakeholders in the organization. Maybe you're not getting sufficient return on investment. Benefits realization is probably something that is neglected until the end of the project and is not being addressed upfront. And what we see a lot is project rework. This is a result of misaligned expectations. You may have some projects where you have your SMEs, your subject matter experts, working on some fancy process design or some new solution, and they neglect the need to consult the actual business owners, people that are going to be accountable once this new process is actually launched into production. This is quite common, and typically it results in a lot of rework because the main business owner or approver or the accountable person is surprised at what you have designed and disagrees, and this can cause a lot of cost. So this is all about stakeholder management and expectations. Also, as you roll out new programs and your projects, you may find that there are organizational scars. People are scarred. People have been burnt by previous projects and programs that were maybe not executed well, that maybe had them working long hours, for 2-year periods where they compromised their family and work life balance. Maybe there was some retrenchment that came about as a result of those programs. So where those projects and programs have not been consolidated, people could still have some scars that affect the way they perceive your rollout of new programs and the way that they would be engaged and adopt and really, contribute to the project delivery. Also, change fatigue from running too many programs and projects at the same time. This can really saturate the organization and can really overwhelm the organization, overwhelm your customers as well if there are many changes coming about, and overwhelm the teams that are executing the changes. So let's agree that every project is a change project, because every project is trying to launch or create something that is different, a new future state of something. So every project is going to result in some sort of change, and therefore change management is relevant because every project needs a human to be able to make the project work. Every project has humans that are end users or consumers of the product that is going to be launched as a result of that project, or the impact that is going to arise as a result of that development initiative. So whether you are driving a M&A project, structural change, dissolving your company, launching a new product or application, BPR, office move, let's not underestimate the challenges that come with moving offices. You'll see more and more change management roles for office move, because it's a very sensitive issue, especially if your offices are relocating to different locations, which is far from transportation systems, from staff, security issues. There's a lot of stakeholder management to be done around that, and a lot of communication to be considered. Same applies for our construction projects, where you're carrying out your EIAs, your environmental impact assessments. There's a lot of stakeholder management that needs to be taken into account depending on where you are planning to build this new road, your new bridge, or your new building, and the people that are going to be affected around it. Value chain projects, I'm talking about projects to improve, let's say, cotton production or cocoa or cashew nuts. How are these projects you're bringing about going to affect the whole chain? How is the farmers going to be affected, and how do they need to be engaged so that the produce is not affected at the end of the day, and that the end consumer is not affected? So every project has to consider change management. The question is not about if change management should be applied. It's about what elements of change management are relevant, and to what extent and to what complexity to make the change work and to make the change be a success and stick. So let's dig deeper. What is change management, if we can dig deeper to define it a little bit more? So if we compare what the PMO does compared to what a change management office would do, within the PMO, we focus on change control management. So this relates to dealing with change requests, changes that are coming as a result of requirements that need to change. Whereas in change management, we are dealing with the human side of change, everything to do with people. In the PMO, you're looking at the integrated risks. So all the risks as they relate to the schedule, to the product, to everything that is technical on the project. But from change management, you are addressing the organizational change readiness, the business change. Are the people in the organization ready? Are the different countries ready that this change will affect? The different branches, the staff at the lowest level of the food chain, everybody that needs to do something different, and looking at the impact in terms of how these programs are going to affect the way they do their day-to-day work. As the PMO is looking at resource management optimization, change management is focusing on accelerating end user adoption. So making sure that there is acceptance, buy-in, engagement, and adoption of the ways we are trying to work in the future. As you're setting up your programs and portfolios, the change management has to develop change management strategies and change management plans, which are integrated into your program plans. They are not something that is run in isolation and have to work in tandem with the program activities. So the change really has to be part and parcel of the execution to make the program a success or your portfolio a success. As PMOs are focusing on scope, making sure that there's no scope creep and managing the scope, the change management helps to manage the expectations of stakeholders around what is in scope and what is not in scope, and what is not going to be delivered. Perhaps when you started off with the scoping, you had 100 requirements, but a smaller team then went and sat in a room and hashed down those 100 requirements to just 20 items, but nobody informed the stakeholders in the organization that these are the 20 things we are now going to deliver. Thank you for your input for your 100. So change management is there to help the PMO and the project manager to manage expectations, because different people are moving along the change journey at different pace. So the change manager is constantly monitoring the expectations of the leadership, the managers, the board, the end users, in terms of what they expect and what they will get or not get, or what will happen in the future. So typically when the project ends, that is the end of the project manager's role. Maybe you'll stick around for hypercare for a month or two, and then you're gone on to the next project. But change management activities need to continue beyond that into production, to be able to ensure that the change is really consolidated and institutionalized as the new way of working in the organization. So you may find the need to keep communicating or training, looking at cultural elements, adjusting job descriptions, and all that for an additional 6 months after you've launched your particular project. So in summary, the PMO or project managers, program managers are rewarded for time, cost, and quality, whereas change management teams are rewarded for business readiness, engagement, and adoption. So two different animals, but focusing on the same goal, which is to ensure that the strategy of the organization is achieved, to ensure that strategic outcomes are achieved, and to ensure that benefits are realized. So when it is applied, change management can help you to actually ensure that your project is better able to be on budget, on time, and to meet goals by almost double the effort. When change management tactics are not applied, you can find that your project KPIs take a nosedive because you may have some costs rising because of failed activities to do on the project, because maybe you have a critical stakeholder that continuously does not show up where a decision needs to be made or where input is needed, and that can delay your project. So you may have your projects have extended schedules. Your project was supposed to be 6 months and it has now ended up being 18 months. And there are more additional project costs that may arise from rework, retraining, and any other unforeseen initiatives that arise during the project. So you may have low adoption and usage because maybe the staff are only discovering the project is going on in the 16th month when you're launching in the 18th month. So they are asking a lot of questions, which will delay their adoption and their understanding of what they need to do to contribute to the success of this initiative in the production phase. And you may have abandonment of processes and systems. If your various teams have not been sufficiently prepared for the new ways of working, they may actually stop using the processes or system and revert to the old way. I was once on a project more than 15 years ago now. where we were called in to try and revive this system, because it's 2 years post the go live, and the staff in the government are not using the system. The adoption and usage rate when monitored on the system was only like 10 or 20%. So people just abandoned it. So we had to revive this thing to create the awareness, train the people, and really accelerate the adoption up to 80%. So with change management, you are more likely to achieve your costs as your objectives as they relate to your costs, schedules, adoption, and compliance with the new processes and systems that you're going to put in place. So the main objective of change management is really to ensure that performance after the launch is achieved in terms of the targets that the organization has in place. Every project starts because there is a need to improve some level of performance. It could be you want to increase your revenue, your profit. It is something performance driven that an organization wants to do something better. So change management is there to ensure that after the launch, after the closure of the project, performance is not compromised, because during the transition, there is a bit of a dip that you would experience in terms of productivity of the teams, because there's a lot of uncertainty in terms of what the initiatives will bring about. So this is what we call the valley of despair. So if this is one project, of course, it is a challenge. But if you're running a program with 10 or 12 or 15 projects under your program, and all your staff and stakeholders are falling into this valley of despair, and there is no change management to guide them through to be able to be at the performance level you expect on the day of the launch or on the first month or 2 to 3 months, of course, your business objectives will not be met in terms of your return on investment, your ROI, whatever indicators you were looking to improve before you went about this project that you launched. So change management also has a lot of gimmicks. So it can generate transformation excitement and dilute change fatigue. Let's face it, there are a lot of not so exciting projects out there. Some compliance projects are not that interesting for staff, but with change management applied, there's a way to make staff interested, to engage the teams, make them aware, and get everybody kind of on board of what needs to be done, not just for compliance, but any project that is there to drive customer satisfaction, that is there to improve the way an organization is operating, etc. So these are some of the gimmicks to bring a bit of fun into the projects. So beyond the fun, it's not just about fun and fluff and chocolates and big cakes and, having music and parties and newsletters, etc. It's actually quite an effort to be able to execute change management. So it's easier said than done, because every project starts with a vision. Let's say your vision is something as amazing as trying to convert a giraffe into an elephant. The people that are affected by this change may be asking, why are we trying to do that? What is the case for this change? So it is part of the change management efforts to be able to define the reason why this change needs to happen. What are the anticipated benefits of why now? Why today? Its giraffe has been a giraffe for years. Why the need for this elephant? What is driving it? There is a need to activate the sponsor. A lot of sponsors get appointed as sponsors, but nobody really empowers them in terms of the details of what they need to do as a sponsor, some of the high-level impacts this change is going to bring about, and what role they need to play throughout the change process. So this is really the role of change, to support your project sponsors, because once the project kickoff, you may have your kickoff with the sponsor, and off you go as the project team to start designing your solutions, and the sponsor is out of the loop, apart from maybe when you update them once in a while in a steering committee, etc. So that's the role of change, to really work hand in hand with the sponsor to ensure that they're empowered to be able to drive and influence and be the face of the project. All the analysis of stakeholders need to be done, internal and external. There is also a need to assess all the changes that are going to arise as a result of this initiative you've put in place. What are all the impacts in terms of process, structures, roles, culture, and customers? And are we ready for this change? So carrying out change readiness assessments at the start of the project, just before the launch, carrying out an assessment after the launch to get immediate feedback on critical issues that are going to affect sustainability and embedment of the change, setting up change champions, looking at ways to engage staff, as you saw on the previous slide I shared, looking at rewards, monetary and non-monetary, to recognize those staff that have really contributed. Maybe they had never worked on a program their whole life, and they've done an excellent job at supporting and driving a particular work stream. So that is worth recognizing. And most of the time, our middle layer, our leadership, are really the ones that will have to embed change once it is operational. So what can we do to ensure that our various leadership layers are empowered, they have the information, they know what to do, and they are able to respond to their staff that are asking them questions throughout the transformation? So this is a big part of change management, to really be cascading the benefits, the processes likely to change on behalf of the PMO and on behalf of the project managers and on behalf of the sponsor, to ensure that there is no miscommunication and that there is no misunderstanding of what is going to change and how. And then, of course, there's also a training element to consider that depending on what is changing, there needs to be sufficient training for all the relevant people that have to do something different. So apart from this technical part of change, there's also the psychological stuff that change managers have to deal with. I'm talking about dealing with all the egos from the various teams, especially at leadership or management level. Egos are rising because they don't have sufficient information, but are too afraid to admit with their teams that they don't know. So we need to be addressing these egos and seeing how to navigate through the change and get them on board and get them to support where support is required to make the change a success. And of course, all the resistance that might come about from different directions in the organization. So that is change management. So what are some of the things that you can do in your PMO to put change management in place? So let's agree that change management is the bridge between your program and your project and operations, because your project will end with an output, your program will end with an output, and change management comes in to really support, to ensure that the organization is outcome focused and that the outcomes that were intended by the project and the output are delivered. To give you an example, you may have an outcome that is expected for increased customer satisfaction, but your project may deliver a CRM system or a new customer centricity culture. But how does that now translate into the increased customer satisfaction that was actually the main KPI for the organization? What else needs to be put in place to monitor, to ensure that was done? What was the baseline for that metric in the first place? And who needs to do what now to ensure that through the CRM, through this customer centricity culture, we're actually able to achieve that? So that is the role of change, to bridge your project and your program, your portfolio with operations, and to ensure that you welcome staff to the other side, which is the future state, the new way of working, the new way of executing. So it's really about minimizing the learning curve to ensure that we don't have stakeholders falling in the pit before they get to the other side, resigning from the organization at a critical point where we need them, sabotaging the programs, or just not being able to cope because of insufficient knowledge or skills or training. So at a programmatic level, it is very critical. This is one area that is often neglected on a lot of projects. An activity called a change impact assessment needs to be carried out for all projects and all programs. especially at a programmatic level, because let's say your program has 3 projects running. You have one project, which is your core banking system. You have another project that is a card system where you are changing your cards, different types of cards for your customer. And you have another project that is to do with customer centricity. All those 3 projects actually affect each other, but are running as independent projects. Now, if you don't do a change impact assessment, you will not be able to see what are the various touch points that all those projects need to integrate. What is the impact in terms of a particular process for account opening? What will it mean for the cards linked to the CBS? What will it mean for the KPI that we have for turnaround time for the customer? What needs to be done in terms of preparing the customer for the change in procedures? So all those impacts need to be looked at. So it's a very painful exercise, I would say, where you have a change with a lot of processes, but it is a very necessary process to compare process by process, step by step, form by form. Are we keeping the same forms? Are they changing? To ensure that all the nitty-gritty that needs to be in place to operationalize the change as smoothly as possible is done. So it's looking at the impacts at the process level, looking at the impacts at a structure level, looking at how roles are affected, looking at the culture, and looking, as I said, at the customer. Everything that the customer has to do differently, or everything that the customer needs to know once everything is launched. So it helps us to assess the magnitude of the change, whether it is big change, small change, or just business as usual, whether new policies need to be put in place to operationalize it, whether additional training we had not identified needs to be put in place, whether some communication needs to go out to the media, etc. So all these items are recommended for you to carry out, identify through a change impact assessment at a project level and also at a program level, so that you catch the cross-pollinating impacts across the various programs and projects. Stakeholder management is something you can pay attention to. So if you look at this picture, one of my favorite pictures, actually, what you see is a typical case of lack of stakeholder management, where a road has been constructed, but one major stakeholder has refused to, cooperate with this new project. So how can we avoid such a situation? If we take the time to analyze our stakeholders, and remember, especially on long projects, stakeholders are changing all the time. Whoever is the COO today might not be there tomorrow. So new stakeholders are coming at different stages during our transformation. So we need to analyze all the stakeholders, know what are their levels of impact and influence, and be able to manage their expectations. What are they all expecting? So in this scenario, had we consulted this gentleman with his house, understood what he may need, what benefits, how this road could benefit him, and really engaged him, we could have avoided this situation. So this is a symbol of probably other stakeholders on our projects that are seen as blockers. They are blocking us from moving forward. They will not approve the invoices. They will not approve the new staff that need to be brought on the project. They will not approve anything because maybe we have not engaged them. We have not understood their expectations. So this is a big role where the PMO can really focus in terms of stakeholder management, and where change management can support the PMO teams in terms of working with various stakeholders one-on-one in focus groups at the appropriate forums as required. So what else can you do to make your PMO change focused? You can be deliberate about the change success that you want to have in the organization. The first thing to highlight is really it starts with prioritization of projects. This is very key to pay attention to because it can really affect the success of change in your organization. If we go for quality rather than quantity, I think we can achieve better transformation and strategic results in the organization. So what can we do differently when it comes to project prioritization? Being able to identify projects and selecting projects that have the most significant benefits in terms of strategic outcomes. So those projects that are likely to give us our strategic outcomes as quickly as possible. So if we have a project that started today and it's running for 3 years and we're only going to get those strategic outcomes after 10 years, is it fundamental to launch that project today, given our current strategy will lapse in 2 years? No, it would make more sense to prioritize those projects that are going to be quick and that will give us the benefits realization quickly, or maybe not to have 50 projects running at the same time, but just select the critical, 5 to 10 or 5 major projects or programs that need to be run today. And this is really going to help in terms of achieving the business outcomes faster. One, two, not overwhelming the project's teams, because guess what? Those people running those 50 projects are the same staff. You find one, I found one portfolio manager who was running almost 10 projects, and not minor projects, major projects, mega projects. And the guy was falling asleep in half the meetings because people are too stretched. So we have resource constraints, but here we are pushing too many project delivery. So let's start with seeing what we can do differently in terms of prioritizing our projects and the projects that fall under our programs and our portfolio, so that we focus on quality and not quantity. And this will help the change adoption and lessen change fatigue and really drive more performance. So think beyond the project. What must we do to ensure the output becomes business as usual? So once we go live, what else have we not thought about to incorporate, and where can change management assist us? Put in place a benefits management framework for your programs and portfolios. Often we prepare business case at the beginning of the project or before the project is launched, but once we launch and start delivering, who really looks at that business case again? It's very rare from what we find in our territory anyway. People start looking for the business case at the end of the project to see, oh yeah, what did we say 4 years ago or 3 years ago? But really, you should use that business case as a base input to come up with your benefits management framework right at the planning stage of your project, to assign the benefits, qualitative and quantitative, assign benefits owners, so that throughout the project you can already be monitoring to see what needs to be done to ensure those benefits are achieved post-implementation. And educate, and educate. So I'm talking about training the change and project teams. Don't assume that your project teams know what is required from a change management perspective. Some staff are just taken from anywhere in the organization and suddenly assigned to be change managers overnight. But have you trained them? Do they have the methodologies? Do they have the experience and the skills to deal with the egos and the resistance and the politics? So all that training should be done, not just for the change delivery team, but the project teams, for the leadership teams, how to really consider the human factors and drive PMO continuous improvement. I came across a statistic earlier which said 55% of PMOs have changed their PMO charter within the last 5 years. So are you the kind of PMO that has your PMO charter gathering dust somewhere, or are you, going back to where you started and, having a critical assessment at your charter to see where does it need to evolve to reflect the changes happening in the organization? We are now running more hybrid projects. Where do we need to reflect that? We are now more agile. A lot is going on internally and externally, and with digitization and AI and all that. So be a PMO that is really doing some health checks or assessment on an ongoing kind of basis to drive continuous improvement. So last few slides. So you can also consider how to embed the change management, because there are different models where you can set up the change management. You may have a setup where you have your change management resources as part of the project team. So you have your PMO and your CM teams in there. So this applied before, let's say on an ERP project for stores retailer, also an insurance business, rolling out M&A and BPR, and worked well. Or you can have a setup the bottom bottom left, sorry, where you can have your change management on the team, but supported by external team. I love this model because if you are a consultant coming in to support a transformation, you already have a change management counterpart in the organization that you can build their skills, you can transfer skills, transfer expertise, and also builds the maturity of that organization in change management. So this works on a lot of projects to really set up that capability within your PMO and organization, especially with large programs. And an example I shared there is a national government digital program which affects the whole country, where you are setting up a national change management office, and you have your change management team built up of the representatives within the government, but then you bring in your change experts to really coach your internal teams. Another model then is to have the change resource outside of the project, but supporting the team. So you may have the team doing their technical project or program activities, and then you bring in the change person externally who is fully accountable to deliver everything. The last model, where you have the project manager also operating as a change manager. This model does not work if you are implementing a very complex or strategic transformation. It does not work because the project manager is too busy trying to ensure that the product or installation takes place. So they are dealing with testing, they are dealing with data migration, they're dealing with scope and the vendor and so forth. So they do not have time to be dealing with egos and resistance and drafting communications and dealing with 1,000 or 20,000 managers in the organization. So that model will not work. It can work where you have a simple change, maybe a single process change. Perhaps you're changing an onboarding process in your organization, or changing one process like reconciliation, which is very light, or your office relocation project. You could have one person doing that if your office is not that large in terms of resources. So those are the different ways you can incorporate change management into your programs and your portfolios. Looking at actually having change management as a function in your organization, in terms of your organizational structure or operating model. This is based on a ProSci survey where 24% of change management functions are sitting in the strategy and transformation and planning departments. 22% are sitting within PMO, 10% in other C-level kind of layers, another 9% within organization development, and then the rest split across various BUs or HR or shared services. So it is up to you if it's going to be a full-time department, how you incorporate it. But if you want to put it within your PMO, it is good to consider some particular factors in terms of how much access will the change function have to projects changes early. So they need to work very, very closely with you, that in real time as changes are taking place, they can incorporate that into the change activities. What is the reputation and credibility of your PMO? Because if you're still working on that and you bring in change, that level of reputation may be transferred to the change team, and they may not get as much traction as they can. Also, the proximity to executives. So if your PMO is 3 or 4 layers down in your organizational hierarchy, this may be a challenge for the change team to work, because they have to work very, very closely with the executive team, with the project sponsor, sometimes with the board. So if there are 4 layers down or 3, the hierarchy, they may not be able to influence, or depending on the culture of your organization, they may not be willing to even engage what they see as people with higher authority. So that is something to also consider. And overall, just cross-organization reach. How will they be able to reach different departments and functions within the organization? So agile is also good to consider your change. We're seeing more and more agile PMOs being set up, or agile projects and programs being run. So this is another area to pay attention to for your PMO, because with every sprint deployment, this leads to a process of changes that need to be sustained and consolidated. So if you have like 4 or 5 sprints, each sprint is going to release different functionality and features into production. So those need to be communicated. There needs to be training around that. The impact of that particular process related to that feature you're releasing needs to be assessed. So it is very critical to integrate change management as well into your agile elements. Lastly, 2 things. One is to integrate your change management into your schedule baseline and your cost baseline. A lot of program managers or project managers would say, oh, you do your plan and run with it. And yeah, if you need anything from me, we'll talk. Right? So that approach, unfortunately, will not assist you as a PMO or as project managers, because then you have 2 silo activities happening. But in fact, change management is there to support you as the PMO and the project manager. So the change plans that are created need to be part and parcel of your project plans and your program plans. It should be one integrated schedule so that nothing is missed from a change management perspective. This will foster stakeholder engagement, which will build better buy-in and trust, and will enhance the project delivery by minimizing disruptions. And it allows change management to then be addressed proactively rather than reactively realizing, oh, we did not consult a particular stakeholder, or we forgot to reach this particular role that will be needed as a result of a new structure that came out of a new process. From the cost perspective, it is good to put some budget for change, because a lot of organizations will launch the project or program, and then once it's launched, they start trying to see how to manage staff that were not trained, or impacts that were not identified. But if you incorporate some budget right up front, this can benefit your PMO. So it is recommended between 10 to 20% of the overall project or program technical cost. So if you're running a project for 5 million and you only have a change management budget for, let's say, 50,000 US, that is not sufficient, unfortunately, to be able to really drive any change. So you can use that as a benchmark, and having the right budget in place can really support to drive the performance, efficiency, and productivity. It can also ensure that there's sufficient budget for resources that you need if your transformation is cutting across different branches and countries and processes, and also to ensure that training is not something that is just a checklist, but is actually really planned for and done very, very well, so that staff are 90% able to execute their jobs before the launch, and the other 10% is just clean up post-launch, and not vice versa. So everything needs to be integrated. Once you have your methodology for your projects, choose your methodology for change. There are many methodologies out there, ProSci, HCMBOK, your Human Change Management Body of Knowledge, etc. Or you could have a blend of those methodologies with the CCMP elements. So once you have your change methodology, blend it with your project methodology, and have one methodology, and blend the processes and tools and everything. And this is how best your change management can operate. So that is it for now. So if you wish to learn more about PMOs and change management, I would like to inform you about PMO training and certification. We are an authorized business partner of the PMO Global Institute, registered in Delaware, and an authorized instructor. So we have 2 certifications. One is the Certified Baseline PMO, which requires a minimum of 5 years experience in projects, and the CAPMO, which is for anybody really interested in PMO. And these certifications are based on the PMO guidebook. So it's your go-to guide for everything you need to fast track your PMO, to set it up, monitor, evaluate the performance, including the PMO governance frameworks, maturity assessments, all the metrics that you need. And those are the dates for the next sessions happening in June, which you can check it out on our website, africachangingemporium.com. I guess you're here because you love PMOs, right? Or you love transformation. I would also love to invite you to the African PMO conference. This is a free conference. It is a virtual conference taking place on the 22nd of May in celebration of Africa Day and in celebration of International PMO Day. So it's falling right in between. And this is hosted by the PMO leader. So I'd love for you to join. It is everything to do with PMO optimization and fast tracking your PMO. And that's the website for you to join. If you wish to learn more about change management, in particular, and would love more training on the practical side of it, how to carry out the stakeholder analysis and the impact assessment and the benefits realization, you can join our next training on that site. So yeah, not to talk more about this because I think I've touched on it, but yeah, everything to do with fast tracking your PMO or establishing your change management office or function within your PMO or within your organization, we can support with. So thank you. Merci. Asanteni. Terima kasih. Thank you, Fernando.
Thank you.
Yes, I can see you
me?
and hear you.
Okay. We had some questions. I'm going to go over some of the questions that we received up front, and then later on we will pass whatever is left, and so you can help us to answer. But the first question comes, and it's regarding how can a PMO establish a change management process with minimal disruption to ongoing projects?
Yeah, I think that is a good question. It's the same advice I would give to a PMO trying to set up for the same time with ongoing projects that are taking place. Of course, you have to set up the purpose of your function, see how it's going to be positioned in the organization, have your methodology, your tools and templates. But the main thing is to really run a proof of concept. So you need to select 1 or 2 projects to pilot with and see how your methodology, your processes and tools work with that. And then once that is in place, you can then apply to the other projects. It is not uncommon for a change manager to join halfway through the project. In fact, that's always the case because organizations realize halfway, oh, shucks, something is missing here. We need help. So if a project is already in flight, you need to know where in the project cycle is it. If you're in the design phase, then you need to then catch up some activities that typically need to be done in the planning stage, like your stakeholder analysis, and then do a readiness assessment to see how much people already know about the transformation, and then prepare your change plan. So whatever stage of the project cycle the project is in, you can quickly jump in and start applying the change management. But you also have to be realistic on what you can and cannot do, because if you're being pulled in 2 months before the launch, then you can't do everything on your checklist. You have to see, okay, what is critical and is going to affect the success of the rollout.
Thank you, Cleopatra. Yeah, it's a tough question because you already start the project, you are on the middle of the project, and then you need to start planning for the change. Yeah. So it is an interesting one. There is another one here really, really interesting. It's what role does the PMO play in fostering a culture of change, particularly in large organizations?
Particularly in large organizations?
Large organizations, yes.
Yeah, I think a PMO has to be an agent of change. They have to be the driver of change. And I think I had one slide where I said every project is a change project. So a PMO has to really embrace that concept and not just treat projects as just something delivering a product. So once you embrace it as a change project, It means that in every project or program that you put in place, you will not allow that project or program to move unless you have a change management plan to support it. So it's all part of your governance framework that you would need to put in place in your PMO and incorporate the human factor, because if you don't put it in the governance, then it leaves room for the change not to be, respected, not to be incorporated, for budget not to be assigned to it.
No, agree. Just adding that wording into the project, change management project, right? So it makes a big difference. So project managers can see the full picture of the project. Sometimes they focus just on delivering the product, as you mentioned, get the project out of their desk, and then forget about what is the rest. That is actually one of the most important parts. And the last one, because the time frame that we had here is, how can the CBPMO facilitate trainings and develop PMO managers with change management skills?
The CBPMO training?
Yes.
Is that the question?
Yes, that's the question. They are focusing on from the CBPMO training point of view.
Okay, so the change management. Yeah, okay. So the CBPMO, just to be clear, it's not change management training. So it will not cover everything you need to know and all the skills you need to be able to execute change management. It has a framework, the CBPMO framework, for setting up, executing, and monitoring your PMO. And within that framework, there are human factor elements like the PMO leadership and the emotional intelligence and some of those aspects. But it will not equip you to be a change manager. It can equip you in terms of your PMO, understanding your governance and areas you can fast track your PMO, how to evaluate the performance of your PMO. So I would recommend, if you want to upskill, to consider both. So you could do the CBPMO in terms of, getting the modern skills to fast track your PMO and set up your governance, your metrics, your maturity assessment, and everything, and then look at the human factor side, and then get trained up on that, and then you can marry the two and see how to bridge everything.
Thank you, Cleopatra. We have a couple of more questions, as I said, but we will send those to you. I think it was a great webinar. As we conclude, I really want to extend our gratitude, Cleopatra, for sharing all this information with us and the PMO community. As I said, we want to grow, we want to learn from experts like you. And to the audience, thank you for your participation, for your engagement, and please let's keep working together. Remember, implementing effective change management makes a difference in your projects. It can be the difference from succeed to failure. So again, thank you everybody. Thank you, Cleopatra, for your time, and I hope to see everybody pretty soon on our next webinar. Thank you.